The whole mess started with something as small as flowers. Just a simple vase of red roses on her desk, and my entire world tilted off its axis. I was at home, scrolling through my email, when my phone buzzed. It was a photo from her coworker, Matt, a casual acquaintance from a couple of office parties. The image showed Lily at her desk, the roses standing tall and proud beside her. She was leaning forward, smiling at them like a giddy teenager. Beneath the photo was Matt's message. "Man, these are nice. Anniversary surprise." The problem was I hadn't sent them. At first, I thought it was some office tradition, maybe a team-building thing. I texted her. "Hey, saw the flowers. They look great. Who are they from?" The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared. A few minutes passed, and finally, she responded. "Oh, just from a client. It's nothing." Something about it felt off. She wasn't the kind of person who let nothing sit on her desk. She hated clutter, hated attention. And yet, there they were, front and center in the picture, her smile beaming brighter than I'd seen in weeks. Still, I told myself to let it go. We'd been a little distant lately, sure, but nothing out of the ordinary. Work was stressful for her. It was probably my imagination. But the next morning, things escalated. I woke up early to make us both coffee, a small tradition we kept alive through all the chaos of life. Her phone buzzed on the counter beside me as I poured the milk. The notification lit up the screen. "I hope the flowers made your day. Can't wait to see you again soon." No name, just a number. My chest tightened. I stared at the message, willing myself to breathe. It wasn't like her to get personal texts from unnamed numbers, let alone ones like that. When she came into the kitchen, her hair wet from the shower, I couldn't stop myself. I pointed to the phone and said, "Who's that?" She looked at me, her expression unreadable, then picked up the phone and swiped the notification away. "Oh, just some mix-up. Probably spam." Before I could press further, she kissed my cheek and grabbed her coffee. "Don't forget, I'm meeting Michelle tonight after work. Don't wait up." The conversation slammed shut like a door in my face. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think this was all in my head. But by the time she left for work, my hands were trembling with unease. So, I did something I've never done in my life. I followed her. I called in sick and waited in my car down the street from her office. I told myself it was crazy, that I was being paranoid. But as the hours passed, I saw her come out around lunch, her steps quick and purposeful. She wasn't alone. A man I didn't recognize, tall, dark-haired, expensive suit, was waiting for her by the curb. She laughed as he handed her a small gift bag. The way she leaned into him, the way he placed a hand on her lower back as they walked into a restaurant together, it felt intimate. Too intimate. My blood ran cold. I wasn't just imagining things. By the time she came home that night, cheerful and full of stories about her girl talk with Michelle, I was ready to explode. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed to be sure. And so, the game began. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her leaning into that man, her hand brushing his arm, his hand grazing her back like it belonged there. It wasn't the kind of touch you shared with a coworker or a friend. It was something else. Something that made my stomach churn. The next morning, Lily acted like nothing had happened. She kissed me goodbye. The same routine as always. But I couldn't shake the feeling that her lips tasted like deceit. I decided I needed more than just suspicions. Started small. I looked through her Instagram for any sign of him, but all her posts were curated perfection. Pictures of sunsets of her favorite lattes. Nothing unusual. But then I noticed her tagged photos. Buried among the harmless snapshots from friends was a picture of her at a bar I didn't recognize. It was from 3 weeks ago. She was leaning against a booth, drink in hand, her head tilted slightly toward someone cropped out of the frame. The caption read, "Such a fun night." And the person who posted it? Someone named Sam Clark. I didn't know a Sam Clark. Clicking on his profile sent me down a rabbit hole. He had photos of himself at work events, most of them at Lily's company. Scrolling further, I found what I was looking for. A picture of him with the same dark-haired man I'd seen with Lily the day before. The caption stopped me cold. Celebrating another deal closed with my main guy, Nathan. Big things ahead, Nathan. I didn't know him, but now I had a name. That night, Lily came home late again. She'd texted earlier, saying there was a last-minute client dinner she couldn't skip. I wanted to ask her outright about Nathan, but I needed more. She was too quick on her feet, too practiced at brushing me off. So, I waited until she went to bed, then did something I swore I'd never do. I unlocked her phone. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her messages. Most of them were harmless. Work group chats, texts with her mom, plans with Michelle. But when I searched for Nathan, nothing came up. No messages, no mentions, nothing. That's when I noticed a folder in her email labeled Personal. My heart raced as I opened it. And there it was. A series of emails, back and forth between her and Nathan, all carefully titled Client Update or Project Timeline. At first glance, they seemed professional, until I saw the one that started with, "Last night was everything." It didn't stop there. "I can't wait to get away for the weekend. These flowers are nothing compared to how I feel when I'm with you." Each word felt like a knife in my chest. I barely noticed her stirring in bed until it was too late. Her voice cut through the silence. "What are you doing with my phone?" Caught. I turned to her, the screen still glowing in my hand. "Who's Nathan?" Her face went pale, but only for a second. Then, as if flipping a switch, she narrowed her eyes. "Why are you going through my phone?" "Don't turn this on me, Lily. I saw the emails. I know about the flowers, about the weekend." She sat up, her voice sharpening like glass. "You're insane. Nathan's a client. Those emails are about work. If you're insecure, that's your problem, not mine. Don't lie to me." My voice was louder now, angrier than I'd ever been. "I followed you yesterday. I saw you with him." That was when her mask slipped. Just for a moment, her lips tightened, her composure cracking. But instead of apologizing, instead of admitting anything, she doubled down. "You followed me?" Her voice was full of mock disbelief. "You're spying on me now?" Jesus, Tyler. Maybe if you spent more time trusting me and less time playing detective, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was twisting everything, trying to make me the villain. I stared at her, my chest heaving. "Just tell me the truth." She leaned back against the headboard, arms crossed. "Fine. You want the truth? The truth is, you're paranoid. You've been smothering me for months, and frankly, I'm sick of it. Nathan is a client. End of story. If you can't handle that, maybe you should look in the mirror and figure out why you're so insecure." Her words hit me like a slap, but it wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. Cold, detached, like I didn't matter. I didn't sleep that night, and for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to be why the next morning. I'd made up my mind. If Lily wanted to turn this into a game, I'd play along, but on my terms. Her gaslighting, her refusal to admit the obvious. It only lit a fire in me. I wasn't going to sit back and be the fool. She was already gone when I woke up. She'd left early. A text left behind like crumbs on a trail. "Heading into work. Late meeting tonight, don't wait up. Love you. Love me." The words felt hollow, more habit than truth. I decided to take the day off. Not to sulk, not to stew, but to plan. The first thing I did was call Matt, her coworker. He owed me for that time I fixed his car last summer, and now it was payback time. I kept my tone casual, friendly. "Hey, Matt." Random question. "Does Lily ever mention a Nathan at work?" There was a pause on the other end. Then a cautious reply. Yeah, Nathan Myers. Big shot client." "Why?" "Just curious," I said, keeping my voice light. "She talks about him a lot at home, and I figured I'd see what he's like." Matt laughed, but there was something uneasy in it. I mean, he's intense. One of those guys who thinks he's the smartest person in the room. Definitely likes to befriend the ladies, if you catch my drift. Caught it. Loud and clear. "Thanks, man. Appreciate it." Step 1. Identify the threat. Check. Step 2 came when I decided to take a closer look at her work-late excuse. If she was meeting him again, I wanted to know where, and more importantly, why. By 7 p.m., I was parked across the street from her office. Her car was still there, its glossy paint catching the glow of the streetlights. But instead of heading to the building, I walked a block down to a cafe that overlooked the office lobby. Perfect vantage point. I didn't have to wait long. At 7:42, she walked out, but she wasn't alone. Nathan was with her, his hand hovering just a little too close to her waist. She didn't pull away. She smiled at him, her head tilted like he'd just said something funny. It was the same look she used to give me when we first started dating. The look that made me feel like the only man in the world. They got into his car. A sleek black sedan that screamed money. I followed them, my heartbeat pounding like a drum. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard I thought it might snap. They didn't go far, just a trendy little restaurant downtown. The kind with dim lighting and $20 cocktails. I parked 2 spaces away, watching as they walked inside. She wasn't dressed for a casual business dinner. Her skirt hugged her curves in a way that was deliberate, and her heels clicked against the pavement like a countdown to destruction. I couldn't take it anymore. I followed them inside. The hostess smiled at me, her voice syrupy sweet. "Do you have a reservation?" "I'm meeting someone," I said, my eyes scanning the room. And then I saw them, tucked into a booth at the back, their heads close together, her hand resting lightly on his arm. My vision tunneled. I marched straight to the table, my footsteps echoing louder than they should have. Lily's head snapped up, her eyes widening. For the first time in days, I saw fear in them. "Tyler," she stammered, her voice shaky. "What are you doing here?" Nathan leaned back, his expression calm, almost amused. "And you must be the husband." His voice was like oil, smooth, but leaving a residue that clung to my skin. "Get up," I said to Lily, ignoring him. My voice was low, but every word carried the weight of 100 suspicions, 1,000 sleepless nights. "Tyler, it's not what it looks like," she began, but I cut her off. Don't insult me by pretending this is innocent." Nathan raised a hand, his tone condescending. "Hey man, maybe we should all calm down." "Shut up." My eyes didn't leave hers. "You've been lying to me for weeks. I gave you every chance to tell me the truth. But instead you're here, with him." She stood up, her face flushed with anger, or maybe embarrassment. "You're making a scene," she hissed, glancing around as if the other diner's stares were more important than what I was saying. "A scene?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This isn't a scene, Lily. This is me finally seeing you for who you are." Nathan smirked, leaning back in his seat like he was enjoying the show. That was my breaking point. I grabbed the gift bag on the table, the same one he'd given her the day before, and threw it onto the floor. Its contents spilled out. A delicate silver necklace, its pendant shaped like a heart. "Is this for work too?" I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't answer. For a moment, the 3 of us stood there, frozen in the wreckage. And then Lily said something that shattered whatever was left of my resolve. "Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't need to go out with someone who actually makes me feel alive." My hands clenched at my sides. The restaurant around us seemed to fade, the clinking of glasses and murmured conversations swallowed by the roar in my ears. "You're unbelievable," I said, my voice cold. "Enjoy your night, Lily. I'm done." And just like that, I walked out. I drove home in silence, the hum of the engine the only thing keeping my thoughts from swallowing me whole. Her words played on repeat in my mind. "Maybe if you weren't so boring." Each syllable hit like a slap, a brutal reminder of how low she thought of me. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my chest felt like it was caving in. The house was dark and quiet, but it wasn't comforting anymore. It was just hollow. Every corner of this place held pieces of our life together. Pictures from vacations, souvenirs from weekends we'd spent laughing and dreaming about the future. It all felt fake now, like props in a play I didn't even know I was starring in. I wanted to smash something, to rip her photos off the wall, throw her clothes into the street, anything to make the pain stop. But instead, I sat down on the couch and stared at nothing. She didn't come home that night. At first, I thought she'd gone back to Nathan's place. But around midnight, I saw a notification pop up on my phone. A transaction from our shared credit card. She'd booked a room at a downtown hotel. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The next morning, I called a lawyer. It wasn't a decision I'd made lightly. Hell, I hadn't even decided for sure if I wanted a divorce. But I needed advice. I needed to know what my options were, what this would look like if I walked away from the woman who had become a stranger overnight. The lawyer was calm, professional. She explained the steps, the paperwork, the messiness of splitting lives that had been tangled together for years. She also advised me to gather evidence. Evidence. The word felt so clinical, but it made sense. If Lily was going to turn this into a battlefield, I needed to be ready. That's when I remembered the emails. I spent the next few hours screenshotting everything. The messages about their weekend plans. The flowers. The nights they'd celebrated deals together. It was all there, laid out in black and white. I forwarded the screenshots to a folder on my own email account and printed hard copies, just in case. By the time Lily walked through the door that evening, I was ready. She didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, she looked annoyed, like I was an inconvenience she'd forgotten about. "Can we talk?" I said, standing in the middle of the living room. She tossed her bag onto the table, her movements careless. "What now, Tyler? What now?" My voice cracked, a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You disappear all night, and that's all you have to say?" She crossed her arms, leaning against the wall like she was bored already. "I needed space. After the stunt you pulled at the restaurant, I figured we both did." "The stunt I pulled?" I took a step closer, the words tumbling out of me before I could stop them. "Are you hearing yourself, Lily? You've been lying to me for weeks, sneaking around. And now, you're blaming me for being angry about it." Her eyes flashed, but instead of backing down, she leaned into the fight. "You're obsessed, Tyler. You're suffocating me. This isn't about Nathan. This is about the fact that you can't handle the idea of me having my own life." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Your own life? Is that what you call it? Lying, cheating, running off to hotel rooms in the middle of the night? How stupid do you think I am?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. "You want to play the victim?" she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Fine, be the martyr. Cry about how I'm such a terrible wife. But let's not pretend you've been perfect either." "What the hell are you talking about? You stopped trying, Tyler," she shouted, her voice finally cracking. "You stopped being exciting. Everything about our life is predictable and boring, and I'm tired of it. Nathan, he made me feel like a person again. Like I wasn't just some wife trapped in your routine." Her words knocked the wind out of me. "Trapped?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I loved you, Lily. I built this life for us. For you." She looked away, her expression hardening again. "Well, maybe that's the problem. You built it for you, Tyler. Not for us. You never asked me what I wanted. You just assumed I'd fall in line." I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman standing in front of me with the one I thought I knew. But there was no going back now. "Then let's stop pretending," I said, my voice cold. "If you're so unhappy, if I'm so boring, let's end this. Let's get a divorce." For the first time, she hesitated. Her lips parted, but no words came out. "You wanted excitement, right?" I pressed. "Well, here it is. Go be with Nathan. Go have your exciting life. I'll move on." Her silence spoke louder than any argument. I walked past her, grabbed my keys and left the house. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city blurring into a haze of lights and shadows. My thoughts raced faster than the car, replaying every word, every accusation, every lie. Lily's face, cold, unrecognizable, was burned into my mind. Eventually, I pulled into an empty parking lot outside an all-night diner. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a red glow over the cracked pavement. I sat there, gripping the wheel, my knuckles white. Divorce. The word hung in the air like smoke, suffocating but inevitable. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I didn't want to look, but something compelled me. It was a text from Lily. "We need to talk." Talk? About what? There was nothing left to say. But before I could even respond, another text came through. "Come home, please." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't regret. But it was something. A crack in the armor she'd worn so smugly last night. Against my better judgment, I started the car and headed back. When I got home, the lights were on, and Lily was waiting in the living room. She was pacing, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. When she saw me, she stopped, her expression unreadable. "You left," she said. as if it were the most offensive thing I could have done. I dropped my keys on the table. What did you expect? You told me I was boring and made me feel like a fool in my own marriage. Why would I stay? Her jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought she might lash out again. But instead, she sighed and sat down on the edge of the couch. Look, she started, her tone softer now, like she was trying to reel me back in. I shouldn't have said those things. I was angry, okay? I didn't mean it. I crossed my arms, staying where I was. You didn't mean it? Which part, Lily? The lies? The cheating? Or the part where you said Nathan makes you feel alive? She flinched, but only slightly. It's not what you think. I couldn't help but laugh, sharp, bitter, hollow. Don't insult me, Lily. I saw the emails. I saw you with him. What exactly do you think I'm imagining here? Her hands gripped the edge of the couch, her knuckles turning white. And then, finally, the mask came off. Fine, she snapped, her voice rising. Yes, I've been seeing Nathan. Is that what you want to hear? Are you happy now? The admission hit me like a punch to the gut, even though I'd already known the truth. Hearing her say it, the words coming from her mouth, made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. Why? I asked, my voice cracking. Why him? Why anyone? She stood up, her posture defiant. Because I was drowning, Tyler. Every day with you felt like I was fading into the background. Nathan made me feel seen. He made me feel alive. Her words stabbed deeper than any knife. So you threw away our marriage for what? For some thrill? For attention? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the window, staring out into the night. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. It wasn't just about him. It was about me. About who I am when I'm not just Tyler's wife. And that meant destroying me in the process? She turned to face me, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. I didn't plan for it to happen, she said, but it did. And now here we are. I stared at her, my heart breaking into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever put back together. Do you love him? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, and that hesitation was answer enough. I don't know, she said finally, but I do know that I can't keep living like this, pretending everything's okay when it's not. Her words were a death sentence for our marriage. Whatever hope I'd held on to, whatever scraps of love had kept me tethered to her, were gone. Then you need to leave, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Pack your things and go. Be with Nathan. Be alive. But don't expect me to be here waiting when it falls apart. For a moment, she looked like she might argue. But then she nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I'll stay at the hotel tonight, she said quietly. I'll come back for my stuff tomorrow. I watched as she grabbed her bag and walked out the door without another word. The sound of it closing behind her was deafening. I stood there in the empty house, the weight of everything crashing down on me. Felt like the end of something I couldn't name, something I thought would last forever. And maybe it was. The silence in the house was unbearable. It wasn't just the absence of Lily. It was the absence of everything she'd taken with her. The laughter, the warmth, even the petty arguments that once felt like the worst thing in the world. All of it was gone, leaving a hollow shell in its place. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, her words haunted me. Nathan made me feel seen. What did that even mean? Had I been so blind, so complacent, that I'd let my wife slip away right in front of me? By 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and started pacing the house. My eyes kept landing on little reminders of her. A jacket draped over the chair, her favorite mug on the counter, a pair of heels she'd left by the door. Felt surreal. She wasn't here, but her presence lingered like a ghost, taunting me. That's when I saw it. Her work laptop. It was sitting on the kitchen table, half hidden under a stack of mail. She must have forgotten it in her rush to leave. For a moment I hesitated. I'd already gone through her phone and emails. What else could I possibly find? But the ache in my chest, the need to know, was stronger than my sense of guilt. I opened the laptop and her password, our wedding date, unlocked it immediately. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her inbox was the first thing I checked. but most of the incriminating emails were already saved on my own devices. I skimmed through her recent messages anyway, hoping for some kind of closure, but there was nothing new. Then I noticed a folder on her desktop labeled Trips. Trips? We hadn't taken a trip together in over a year. Clicking on it felt like opening Pandora's box. Inside were dozens of PDFs, receipts, and itineraries. Flights to Miami, hotel bookings in Chicago, dinner reservations at restaurants I'd never heard of. Dates matched the nights she'd worked late or gone on business trips. One receipt caught my eye, a booking for 2 at a luxury resort. It wasn't just the date that hurt. It was the note attached. Romantic getaway package for Lily and Nathan. My stomach churned, bile rising in my throat. She hadn't just been sneaking around. She'd built an entire fantasy life with him, a world where I didn't exist. It got worse. There were photos, too, hidden in another folder under an unassuming name. Pictures of the two of them, smiling at the beach, clinking glasses at candlelit dinners, his arm wrapped around her waist. In one photo, she wore a necklace I didn't recognize, the silver pendant glinting in the sunlight, the necklace from the gift bag. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. This wasn't just a fling. This was something deeper, something that made a mockery of the life we'd built together. Before I could process the betrayal, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a notification from our shared calendar. Lily's birthday dinner, 7 p.m. tonight. I'd forgotten. Between the fights and the revelations, I'd completely forgotten. Last month, I'd made a reservation at her favorite restaurant and ordered a custom cake. Back then, I'd been excited, imagining her face lighting up when she saw it. Now, the thought of celebrating her felt absurd. And yet, something inside me stirred. An idea. I called the restaurant and confirmed the reservation, telling them to keep the details exactly as they were. Then, I sent Lily a text. Happy early birthday. Let's talk tonight. I've got a surprise for you at 7 p.m. It was a gamble. Part of me wondered if she'd even show up, but the other part, the part desperate to confront her one last time, hoped she wouldn't be able to resist. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I replayed every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I might have missed, cracks I should have noticed. The guilt was overwhelming, but it was drowned out by the anger, the sense of betrayal that burned hotter with each passing hour. By the time 7 p.m. rolled around, I was seated at the table, waiting. The restaurant was dimly lit, the hum of conversation and clinking glasses filling the air. A waiter placed a bottle of wine on the table, her favorite, and gave me a polite smile. She arrived at 7:15, her expression wary as she spotted me. "Tyler," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "This feels unnecessary." "Unnecessary?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Funny. That's how I felt about your business dinners with Nathan." Her face stiffened, but she didn't respond. The waiter returned with the cake. A small but elaborate creation with "Happy Birthday, Lily," scrawled in elegant icing. I motioned for him to leave it on the table, untouched. "I thought we should celebrate," I said, leaning back in my chair. "After all, you've been busy celebrating without me." Her eyes flicked to the cake, then back to me. "Tyler, if this is some kind of trap." "It's not a trap," I interrupted. "It's a chance for you to finally tell me the truth." For a moment, she said nothing, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the napkin. Then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "What do you want me to say?" she asked, her voice quiet. "That I screwed up? That I was selfish? Fine, I'll say it. But it doesn't change anything." "Doesn't change anything?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You lied to me. You cheated. You built a whole other life with him. And now you're telling me it doesn't matter." Her gaze hardened, and for the first time, I saw something close to defiance in her eyes. "You want to know the truth, Tyler? Fine. I chose him because he made me feel alive. Because for once, I wasn't just your wife. I was me. And maybe that makes me a bad person, but at least I was honest with myself." I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "Honest? You call this honesty? Hiding, sneaking around, lying to my face. This is honesty to you?" She didn't answer. The silence between us was deafening. the weight of everything we'd lost pressing down on both of us. Finally, I stood up, tossing a few bills on the table. "Enjoy the cake, Lily. It's the last thing you'll get from me." And with that, I walked away, leaving her sitting there, alone with the ashes of what we once had. I didn't go home after walking out of the restaurant. I drove to a bar on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions. The whiskey burned my throat, but it was a welcome distraction from the fire raging in my chest. I thought the confrontation would bring me clarity, closure. Instead, it left me more broken than before. Her words replayed in my mind, twisting the knife she'd already plunged into my back. At least I was honest with myself. Honest, the audacity of it made my blood boil all over again. By the third drink, my phone buzzed on the bar. It was a text from an unknown number. "You don't know the whole story. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Coffee shop on 8th. Nathan." Nathan. I stared at the message, my grip tightening around the glass. Of all the outcomes I'd imagined, this wasn't one of them. What did he want? Why would he reach out to me now after everything? My first instinct was to delete the message and block the number. But the longer I sat there, the more curiosity gnawed at me. Maybe this was my chance to get answers. Maybe he'd slip up, reveal something Lily hadn't told me. Or maybe I just wanted to look him in the eye and see the man who'd destroyed my marriage. By the time I left the bar, I'd made up my mind. The next morning, I was at the coffee shop 10 minutes early. It was a small place, quiet except for the hum of the espresso machine and the occasional clatter of mugs. I chose a table near the window, the better to see him coming. Nathan arrived right on time. He was taller than I remembered, his tailored suit and confident stride radiating the kind of arrogance I'd come to associate with him. He spotted me immediately and approached, offering a hand like we were old friends. "Tyler," he said, his tone annoyingly calm. "Thanks for meeting me." I didn't take his hand. He sat down across from me, unbothered by the rejection. His movements were smooth, calculated, like he was used to being in control. "Why am I here, Nathan?" I asked, skipping the pleasantries. He leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "Because you deserve to hear the truth. From me." I laughed bitterly. "The truth? From the guy who's been screwing my wife behind my back? Spare me." His jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. "Look, I'm not here to defend what happened. I know what we did was wrong. But there's more to this than you realize." I leaned forward, my voice cold. "Then get to the point." He hesitated, glancing out the window as if searching for the right words. When he finally spoke, his tone was softer, almost apologetic. "Lily's been struggling, Tyler. For a long time. She told me things about your marriage, about how she felt invisible, trapped. I didn't mean for this to happen, but..." I cut him off. Don't sit here and pretend you were her savior. You didn't mean for this to happen? You bought her flowers. You took her on trips. You built a relationship with her while she was still my wife." He held up a hand, his calm demeanor finally cracking. "I'm not excusing it. I'm just trying to explain. Lily's not happy, Tyler. She hasn't been for a long time." The words hit like a punch to the gut, but I refused to show it. "So what? You're the solution to all her problems? What do you want from me, Nathan? Validation? Forgiveness?" He shook his head. "I want you to know that this isn't just about you. Or me. It's about her. She needs to figure out who she is, and she couldn't do that in your marriage." I stared at him, my hands clenched into fists under the table. His words were infuriatingly rational, but they didn't absolve him or her. "You think I didn't try?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. "You think I didn't give her everything I had? Maybe she was unhappy, but she never said a damn thing. Instead, she ran to you." Nathan didn't respond immediately. He studied me, his expression unreadable. Then he said something that stopped me cold. "She's not with me anymore." I blinked, the words taking a moment to register. "What?" "She ended it," he said, his voice quieter now. "A few days ago. Said she needed space to figure things out. That she couldn't keep lying to herself, or to you." My mind reeled. Lily had left him? After everything? "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice hoarse. He leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Because I want you to understand. She's lost Tyler. And whether you believe it or not, she still cares about you. Maybe she's too proud to say it, but it's true. I didn't know what to say. For weeks, my life had been a whirlwind of anger and betrayal. But now, for the first time, there was something else. Confusion. Nathan stood, smoothing the front of his suit. I don't expect you to forgive me, or her, but whatever happens next, don't let this destroy you. You deserve better than that. He left without another word, leaving me sitting there, alone with the weight of his confession. Lily had ended it. The woman who had shattered my heart, who had torn apart our life for someone else, was now just as adrift as I was. For the first time, I didn't know if that made me feel better, or worse, that I didn't go home right away after my meeting with Nathan. I stayed at the coffee shop, staring at the half-empty cup in front of me, trying to make sense of everything. Lily had left him. The man she'd thrown our marriage away for was no longer in the picture, and yet the damage was already done. By the time I walked through the door of our house, it was late afternoon. The sight of her suitcase by the stairs stopped me cold. She was back. Lily was in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She looked up when I entered, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The air between us was thick with tension, with the weight of everything left unsaid. "You're here," I said finally, my voice sharper than I intended. She nodded, setting the mug down on the counter. "I came to pack." "Pack?" I echoed, though the suitcase made it obvious. "I'm leaving, Tyler," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "It's time." I didn't respond right away. I wanted to say something, anything, that would pierce through her detached demeanor, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter. "So, that's it?" I asked, finally breaking the silence. "You destroy everything, and now you're just leaving?" Her jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought she might snap back at me, like she had so many times before. But when she spoke, her voice was quiet. "I don't know what else to do," she admitted. "How about owning up to what you've done?" I said, the anger rising in my chest again. "How about explaining why you thought it was okay to lie to me, to humiliate me?" She looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the counter. "I've told you everything I can, Tyler. I made mistakes, big ones, and I can't fix them. I'm not going to stand here and pretend I can." Her honesty, while cutting, lacked the remorse I so desperately wanted to see. It was as though she'd resigned herself to being the villain of this story, and that infuriated me even more. "Nathan told me you ended it," I said, watching her reaction closely. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, a spark of something, surprise, crossing her face. "You talked to him?" "He reached out," I said, my tone cold. "Said you broke things off. Is that true?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, I ended it." "Why?" I demanded. "You gave up everything for him, and now he's just nothing?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, and when she spoke, her voice was tinged with frustration. "Because I realized he wasn't the answer. He wasn't what I thought he was. I thought he could fix something that was broken, but he just made it worse. And now you're running," I said, shaking my head. "Instead of trying to fix the mess you created, you're running away." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you want me to do, Tyler? Beg for your forgiveness? Pretend we can go back to the way things were? We can't. You don't get to decide that," I snapped. "You don't get to make every choice in this marriage, to tear it apart and then walk away when it's convenient for you." She crossed her arms, her voice hardening. "I'm not the only one who failed, Tyler. Maybe I cheated, but you checked out long before Nathan came into the picture. We were broken long before this." Her words hit like a sledgehammer. I wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong. But deep down, I knew there was some truth in what she said. For a long moment, we just stood there, the silence between us louder than any argument. Finally, I took a deep breath. "You're right," I said, surprising even myself. "We were broken, but you didn't try to fix it. You gave up, and now so will I." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw something resembling regret. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything. It wasn't enough. Couldn't be. But it was something. I nodded, the finality of it all settling over me like a heavy weight. Take your things and go, Lily. I'll call the lawyer tomorrow. She hesitated, as if there was more she wanted to say, but in the end, she just nodded. I watched as she carried her suitcase out the door, the sound of it rolling down the driveway echoing in the quiet evening. When the door clicked shut behind her, I felt an odd mix of emotions. Relief, anger, sadness. But above all, I felt free. Free to rebuild. Free to move on. Free to finally put the pieces of my shattered life back together. Lily was gone, and this time I knew she wasn't coming back.